Rural girl mocked as a bumpkin in job interview, but they didn't know she was the CEO's secret lover. Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome back to Mr. Peter Stories. Before we step into today's story, I want to take a sacred moment, not just to greet you, but to reach into your heart and ask, how are you truly? How is your soul holding up? How is your health, your peace of mind, your family? Have you been resting, eating, smiling, even just a little? I ask because I love you, and not in passing, but with depth, with care, with all that I am. You are more than a voice in the crowd. You are the warmth behind this channel, the love in every line I write. Without you, none of this has meaning. You've been my silent strength, my inspiration, my reason to keep going, even when the days felt dark. And I need you to know, I see you, I feel you, I cherish you. If you're walking through a valley right now, facing battles no one sees, please remember, you are not alone. I'm here. We are here. This is a family built on love, and I will always, always hold space for you. Now I ask, with all my heart, who is still here? I want to know, my attendants, my family. If you're with me, say, I'm here in the comments. Send me a heart, or just whisper it to the wind. I'll feel it. Let me know that the love we built still lives and breathes. And now, please receive this deep and tender prayer from my soul to yours. May peace kiss your forehead tonight. May your home be guarded by grace, and your heart by unshakable hope. May your body find healing, your mind find rest, and your spirit rise with new strength. May your loved ones be safe, your path be clear, and may every hidden prayer you carry be answered in perfect time. You are loved, you are worthy, you are not forgotten. Now, my beloved family, let us begin with nothing but love and light. Bianca Peter's fingers trembled as she smoothed down the front of her emerald dress, the one she'd saved 3 months to buy. The fabric clung to her curves in a way that made her feel both beautiful and exposed as she waited in the gleaming lobby of Vance Enterprises, 52 stories above a city that had already made her feel small. Ms. Peter? A sleek receptionist with glass-sharp cheekbones called her name. The committee will see you now. Bianca took a steadying breath, clutching her portfolio. Inside were the agricultural research papers that had earned her summa cum laude honors, research that could revolutionize sustainable farming and had secured her this coveted interview at the most prestigious agricultural technology company in the country. The boardroom doors opened to reveal 5 executives, all men in identical charcoal suits, seated around a mahogany table that probably cost more than her family's entire farmhouse. Ms. Peter, please sit. The oldest executive gestured without looking up from her resume. Bianca settled into the chair, her back straight, chin high, the posture her mama had taught her when facing difficult situations. Thank you for this opportunity, gentlemen. I'm eager to discuss how my research in sustainable crop rotation could benefit Vance Enterprises' mission. The youngest executive smirked. You've got quite the unique background. Tell us, do people actually go to college where you're from, or was yours the first acceptance letter the town had seen? Heat rushed to Bianca's cheeks, but she maintained her composure. Clayton State University has an excellent agricultural program, sir. My thesis on drought-resistant crop development received recognition from, I'm sure it was very impressive by rural standards, interrupted another executive, his voice dripping with condescension. But Vance Enterprises operates on a global scale. The room seemed to close in around her as they continued, their questions becoming increasingly pointed. That accent, quite charming. Very country. Do they have computers on your family farm, or did you have to learn typing on this? Trip to the big city? Your dress is colorful. Is that what passes for professional attire in, where was it? Little Creek. Bianca's throat tightened with each barb, but she refused to give them the satisfaction of seeing her crumble. Instead, she answered each. Question with dignity, redirecting the conversation back to her qualifications whenever possible. What Bianca didn't know was that Andrew Vance, 33-year-old CEO and heir to the Vance empire, was observing the interview through the one-way glass that lined the back wall of the boardroom. It was something he rarely did, usually trusting his executives to scout the best talent. But something about this candidate's resume had caught his attention. As the mockery continued, Andrew's jaw clenched. He'd built Vance Enterprises into a company that championed innovation, not this old boys club attitude he was witnessing. But it wasn't just professional disapproval that stirred within him. It was her. Even under the harsh fluorescent lights, Bianca Peter radiated quiet determination. Her smooth, dark skin seemed to glow with inner light, and when she spoke about agricultural sustainability, her eyes sparked with passion that made Andrew's breath catch. Despite the executive's cruelty, she maintained her composure with a grace that made the men across from her look increasingly petty. "One last question, Ms. Peter," said the head executive with a smirk. "Our company cultivates excellence from the ground up. Given your background, what makes you think you belong in our soil?" Bianca set down her pen, meeting his gaze directly. "Sir, I grew up understanding that the richest soil often looks like plain dirt to the untrained eye. My background, as you call it, taught me that genuine growth requires both innovation and respect for tradition, something I believed Vance Enterprises valued." Andrew felt something stir in his chest at her words. Admiration certainly, but something else too, something he hadn't felt in years of boardrooms and business deals. "Well, that's all very poetic," laughed one executive. "Maybe you should have applied to the marketing department instead. They love pretty words with no substance." "Thank you for your time, Ms. Peter," the head executive said, already shuffling her resume to the bottom of his pile. "We'll be in touch." The dismissal was clear. With graceful movements that belied her inner turmoil, Bianca gathered her portfolio, thanked them with remarkable poise, and walked out with her head high. As the door closed behind her, Andrew watched through the glass as her shoulders finally slumped. The mask of composure cracked, revealing a flash of pain that twisted something in his chest. "Gentlemen," he said, pressing the intercom button. "My office, now." 10 minutes later, Andrew paced before the same executives who had just torn apart Bianca Peter's confidence. "Explain to me how mocking a candidate's background constitutes proper interview protocol," he demanded, his voice dangerously quiet. "Sir, we were merely testing her resilience," the youngest executive stammered. "This industry requires thick skin." "What I witnessed wasn't testing resilience," Andrew cut in. "It was elitism at its worst. Did any of you bother to read her actual research?" Silence fell across the room. "As I suspected." Andrew stopped pacing, fixing them with a cold stare. "That country bumpkin you just humiliated graduated top of her class. Her innovative approaches to drought resistance could revolutionize our sustainability division." "With all due respect, sir," the head executive interjected, "her credentials looked impressive on paper, but she's clearly not Vance material. She wouldn't fit our culture." "Perhaps it's our culture that needs reassessment," Andrew replied, his mind still filled with the image of Bianca's dignified responses amidst their cruelty. "I expect better from this company, from all of you." After dismissing them with a warning, Andrew found himself drawn to his office window, gazing down at the bustling street below. Somewhere in that sea of people was Bianca Peter, likely fighting back tears as she navigated a city that had just reinforced every prejudice about urban elitism. He should let it go. He had a company to run, board meetings to prepare for, yet all he could think about was the flash of hurt in those expressive eyes when the executives had mocked her home. Before he could second-guess himself, Andrew grabbed his jacket. "Cancel my afternoon," he told his surprised assistant. Something important came up. As the elevator descended, Andrew couldn't explain the pull he felt toward this stranger. All he knew was that for the first time in years, someone, had awakened a part of him he'd forgotten existed beneath the weight of the Vance name. He just needed to find her. Chapter 2. Rain-soaked meeting. The first fat raindrop hit Bianca's cheek as she stepped out of the Vance Enterprises building, mingling with the tear she'd finally allowed to escape. By the time she'd walked a block, the sky had opened completely, drenching her in seconds. Perfect. Even the weather was conspiring against her. She ducked under the awning of a small cafe, watching her dreams wash away down the storm drain along with her makeup. The emerald dress, her investment in a future that now seemed laughable, clung to her body, soaked and ruined. "Excuse me," a deep voice said behind her. "You look like you could use this." Bianca turned to find a tall, broad-shouldered man holding out an umbrella. His custom suit probably cost more than her entire wardrobe, but his eyes held none of the condescension she'd faced in the interview room. Instead, they were a striking blue-green, the color of deep water, and crinkled slightly at the corners, as if he smiled often. "I'm fine, thank you," she replied automatically, pride making her voice stiffer than intended. "Are you?" he asked, his gaze too perceptive. "Because from where I'm standing, you look like you're having about as good a day as I am." He extended the umbrella again. "I'm Drew, by the way." A gust of wind drove more rain under the awning, making Bianca shiver. Her resolve weakened. "Bianca," she offered, reluctantly accepting the umbrella. Their fingers brushed during the exchange, sending an unexpected jolt through her body. She nearly dropped the umbrella, startled by the intensity of the sensation. "Nice to meet you, Bianca," he said, his voice somehow softer. "The least I can do is buy you a coffee while you dry off, unless you have somewhere you need to be." The only place Bianca needed to be was on the train home, tail between her legs, dreams shattered. But something in his genuinely warm smile made her hesitate. "One coffee," she agreed, surprising herself, "but I'm buying my own." Drew chuckled, a rich sound that seemed to vibrate in the air between them. "I figured you might say that. You look like a woman who stands her ground." Inside the cafe, the warm air enveloped Bianca like an embrace, scented with espresso and cinnamon. She chose a small table near the window while Drew ordered. When he returned with their drinks, she noticed he'd removed his suit jacket, revealing a crisp white shirt that stretched across broad shoulders. "So," he said, sliding her latte across the table, "what brings you to the city? You don't strike me as a local." Bianca wrapped her cold fingers around the warm ceramic, debating how much to share with this stranger. Something about his attentive gaze made her want to open up in a way that surprised her. "An interview," she admitted finally. "A spectacular disaster of an interview, actually." "I'm sorry to hear that." His expression seemed genuinely sympathetic. "Their loss, I'd say. You don't even know my qualifications," she laughed, though it came out more bitter than intended. "I know enough," he replied, his eyes never leaving hers. "I can see intelligence in your eyes, and determination. Those are rarer qualities than you might think." Bianca felt warmth creep into her cheeks that had nothing to do with the coffee. "I have a degree in agricultural science," she said. "Sustainable farming practices. I thought I could make a difference." "You still can," Drew said. Something in his voice made her believe him, at least for a moment. "Just because one door closed doesn't mean there aren't others." The conversation flowed easily after that. Drew asked questions about her research, showing genuine interest in her ideas. He didn't once interrupt or talk down to her, something Bianca wasn't used to in professional settings. When she spoke about her family's farm, he leaned forward, truly listening. "So the technique essentially mimics natural ecosystems?" he asked after she'd explained her approach to drought resistance. "Exactly." Bianca felt her passion reigniting. Traditional farming methods often work against nature, but if we can work with ecological systems, we can create sustainable... She stopped suddenly, embarrassed by her enthusiasm. Sorry, I get carried away talking about this. Don't apologize, Drew said, reaching across the table. His fingers hovered near hers, not quite touching, but close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his skin. It's refreshing to hear someone speak with such passion. Outside, the rain had stopped, but neither made a move to leave. One coffee turned into two, then a shared slice of chocolate cake. Bianca found herself laughing at Drew's stories, forgetting the humiliation of the morning. He never mentioned what he did for work, and she didn't ask, content in this bubble where credentials and backgrounds didn't matter. As afternoon faded into evening, Bianca realized with a start that she'd missed her train home. I should go, she said reluctantly. I need to find a hotel for tonight. Let me help, Drew offered immediately. I know this city well. He helped her find an affordable hotel just 3 blocks away, insisting on walking her there under the shared umbrella. Their bodies brushed occasionally, each contact sending a flutter through Bianca's stomach. At the hotel entrance, an awkward silence fell between them. Bianca realized she didn't want this unexpected connection to end. Thank you, she said softly, for turning around a terrible day. Drew's smile made her heart skip. The pleasure was entirely mine. He hesitated, then pulled a business card from his wallet. I'd like to see you again before you leave the city, if you're interested. Their fingers brushed again as she took the card, and this time neither pulled away quickly. The contact lingered, deliberate and charged with unspoken attraction. I'd like that, Bianca admitted, surprising herself with her boldness. As she watched him walk away, Bianca realized he hadn't given her a last name. The business card in her hand simply read Drew with a phone number. No company, no position, no credentials, just a name. And somehow that felt right. For the first time since arriving in the city, she'd been seen as just Bianca. Not a country girl, not an agricultural scientist, just herself. In her hotel room, Bianca slipped the card into her wallet, a smile playing on her lips. Perhaps tomorrow wouldn't be just about crawling home in defeat after all. What she couldn't know was that across town, Andrew Vance sat in his penthouse, staring at the phone number he'd scrawled on a simple card. The first time in years he'd given anyone his personal number rather than routing them through assistants and secretaries. He'd told her to call him Drew, a nickname no one had used since college. For one rain-soaked afternoon, he'd escaped the weight of being Andrew Vance, CEO, heir, figurehead. For one perfect afternoon, he'd just been a man captivated by a woman's smile, and he was already counting the minutes until he might see that smile again. Chapter 3. Unexpected Desire. Bianca woke to sunlight streaming through thin hotel curtains, momentarily disoriented by the unfamiliar surroundings. Her gaze fell on the business card on the nightstand, and memories of rain, coffee, and those striking blue-green eyes flooded back. She traced her finger over the simple name, Drew, and felt a flutter in her stomach that had no place in her practical, planned life. She should be focused on finding a way home, tail between her legs, to face her family with the news of her rejection. Instead, her finger hovered over her phone. Drew's number half entered. "This is ridiculous," she muttered to herself. "You met him once." But before she could talk herself out of it, her phone buzzed with an incoming message from an unknown number. "Good morning. I hope this isn't too forward, but I can't stop thinking about our conversation yesterday. Would you consider extending your stay? I know a place that makes pancakes almost as good as those from small-town diners." Drew. Bianca's heart raced as she read the message twice. Logic told her to decline politely. She had responsibilities at home, limited funds. No reason to stay in a city that had already rejected her, but her thumbs were already typing a response. I do have high standards for pancakes. I suppose I should stay to verify your claim, for scientific purposes, of course. His reply came almost immediately. I'll pick you up in an hour. For science. 58 minutes later, Bianca stood outside her hotel, wearing the only other outfit she'd packed. A simple sundress with a pattern of tiny sunflowers. She'd spent far too long on her appearance for just breakfast, and was silently scolding herself when a sleek black car pulled to the curb. Drew stepped out, looking unfairly handsome in dark jeans and a light blue button-down that made his eyes even more striking. For a moment, they simply looked at each other, an electric current seeming to connect them across the sidewalk. "You look beautiful," he said finally, his voice slightly rough. "It's just a dress from back home," Bianca replied, suddenly self-conscious, about the simple cotton garment. Drew stepped closer, the scent of his cologne making her pulse quicken. "It's not the dress," he said softly. "It's who's wearing it." Breakfast extended into a walk through a hidden garden tucked between skyscrapers. Then lunch at a hole-in-the-wall restaurant Drew swore had the best Caribbean food in the city. Throughout the day, Bianca found herself sharing stories she rarely told anyone, about her grandmother's lessons in herbal remedies, about the night she'd stayed up watching a foal being born when she was 8, about her dreams of revolutionizing. "Farming methods. My father thinks I'm chasing rainbows," she admitted, as they sat on a bench overlooking the river. "He doesn't understand why I can't just be satisfied with our traditional methods." "Because innovators are never satisfied with good enough," Drew replied, his shoulder pressed against hers on the narrow bench. The casual contact sent waves of warmth through her body. "That's what makes them special." Their eyes met, and for a breathless moment Bianca thought he might kiss her. Instead, Drew reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingertips lingering against her cheek. "I should be honest with you," he said, his expression suddenly serious. "I work at Vance Enterprises." Bianca stiffened. "You do?" "I'm not involved in hiring," he added quickly. "But when I heard how they treated you in that interview—" He stopped himself. "It's inexcusable. That's not what the company should stand for. You heard about my interview?" Embarrassment flooded through her. "People talk," Drew said vaguely. "But that's not why I approached you yesterday. When I saw you in that cafe—" He looked away, then back at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "I just knew I needed to meet you." The revelation that he worked for Vance should have dampened Bianca's growing feelings, but something in his earnest expression made her believe him. "I should be on a train home," she admitted. "I can't afford another night at the hotel." "Stay," Drew said, his hand finding hers on the bench between them. His touch sent electricity racing up her arm. "I mean, there's a corporate apartment building Vance keeps for visiting executives. Most units are empty right now. I could arrange for you to use one. No strings attached," he added quickly. "Just give the city another chance?" Logic told Bianca to decline, but the thought of returning to Little Creek without experiencing more of whatever this connection was between them felt unbearable. "Okay," she whispered. "A few more days." Those few days turned into a week of discovery, both of the city and each other. Each morning Drew would message with a new adventure planned. Each evening they would linger longer before saying goodnight, the air between them growing heavier with unspoken desire. On the 5th night, they found themselves on the rooftop terrace of the corporate apartment building. The city lights spread. Before them, like fallen stars, Drew had brought dinner, a picnic of foods from all the places they'd visited together that week. "Did you know," Bianca said, her head resting against his shoulder as they sat side by side on a cushioned bench, "that in sunflower fields all the flowers turn to face each other on cloudy days when they can't see the sun? They find light in each other," Drew murmured, his arm around her shoulders, pulling her closer. "Exactly." She turned to face him, their faces now inches apart. "That's what you've been for me this week. Light when I thought there was only rejection." Confession hung in the air between them, more intimate than anything she'd shared before. Drew's gaze dropped to her lips, then back to her eyes, asking a silent question. Bianca answered by leaning forward, eliminating the space between them. Their first kiss was gentle, exploratory, his lips warm and soft against hers. But when Bianca's hand moved to his chest, feeling his heart hammering beneath her palm, something shifted. Drew groaned softly, deepening the kiss, his hands sliding into her hair to cradle the back of her head. Heat bloomed between them, the kiss growing hungry, desperate. Bianca found herself being pulled onto his lap, her thighs straddling his as his hands mapped the curve of her waist, her back, her hips. She gasped when his lips found the sensitive spot just below her ear, his breath hot against her skin. "Bianca," he whispered, her name sounding like a prayer on his lips. "You have no idea what you do to me." The evidence of his desire pressed against her center, making her own needs spiral tighter. Bianca rocked against him instinctively, drawing a raw sound from deep in his throat. "We should stop," Drew said, even as his hands slid higher along her sides, his thumbs brushing the undersides of her breasts through her dress. "I don't want you to think this is all I—" Bianca silenced him with another kiss, bolder now. "I know," she breathed against his mouth. "I know exactly who you are." But she didn't, not really. And as Drew carried her to his apartment, both of them unable to keep their hands off each other in the elevator, he was painfully aware of the truth still hidden between them. "Tomorrow," he promised himself, as Bianca unbuttoned his shirt with trembling fingers. Tomorrow he would tell her everything. Tonight he would worship every inch of her body the way she deserved, committing to memory the taste of her skin, the sound of her gasps, the feeling of her coming apart in his arms. Tonight he was simply Drew, a man falling hopelessly for a woman who saw past every facade to the person he wished he could be. The secret of his true identity hung over him like a storm cloud on the horizon. But as Bianca whispered his name, the wrong name, against his lips, Andrew Vance knew with absolute certainty that he was already in too deep to turn back. Chapter 4. Betrayal. Bianca woke to sunlight streaming across unfamiliar sheets, and the ghost of kisses still tingling on her skin. For a moment, she simply breathed in Drew's scent from the pillow beside her. Memories of the previous night sent a flush of heat through her body. They hadn't made love completely, but their hours of intimate exploration had been more profound than anything she'd experienced before. The space beside her was empty, but she could hear movement in the kitchen. Wrapping the sheet around herself, Bianca padded to the doorway, pausing to admire Drew's bare back as he stood at the stove, wearing only low-hanging pajama pants. The muscles shifted beneath his skin as he flipped pancakes, and Bianca felt a surge of desire so strong it left her breathless. "Good morning," she said softly. Drew turned, his eyes darkening as they took in her disheveled appearance. Hair wild from his fingers, lips still swollen from his kisses, sheet clutched to her chest. In 3 strides he crossed the kitchen, backing her against the doorframe, his mouth claiming hers in a kiss that quickly rekindled the fire between them. "I've been waiting for you to wake up," he murmured against her neck. "Longest hour of my life." Bianca's laugh turned into a gasp as his hand slipped beneath the sheet, finding bare skin. "The pancakes will burn," she managed to say as his touch left her knees weak. "I'll make more," he growled, lifting her into his arms and carrying her back toward the bedroom. Later, tangled in sheets damp with perspiration, they fed each other cooling pancakes between lazy kisses, maple syrup making everything sticky and sweet. "I have to tell you something," Drew said, his expression suddenly serious. About work. Bianca's phone rang before he could continue, her sister's ringtone cutting through the intimate atmosphere. Excusing herself, she took the call in the bathroom, quickly learning that her father had fired their farm manager after a heated argument about outdated techniques. Now they were short-handed during a critical planting period. "I'll catch a train home this afternoon," Bianca promised, guilt washing over her. She'd been lost in this fantasy with Drew while her family struggled. When she emerged, Drew was fully dressed, his expression unreadable. "Everything okay? I have to go home," she explained, gathering her scattered clothes. "Family emergency." "Let me drive you," he offered immediately. "I can have you there in half the time a train would take." Bianca hesitated, the division between her worlds suddenly stark. Drew belonged to gleaming skyscrapers and sophisticated restaurants, not dusty back roads and farmhouses in need of paint. "You don't have to do that." "I want to," he insisted, taking her hands in his. "Bianca, what I was trying to say earlier, there's something you should know about me before." Her phone rang again, this time the tone she'd set for potential employers. Her heart leapt. "I'm sorry I have to take this." The female voice on the other end was crisp and professional. "Ms. Peter, this is Catherine Morris from Vance Enterprises. I'm calling to offer you the position of research developer in our sustainability division." Bianca's knees weakened. She sank onto the edge of the bed, aware of Drew watching her intently. There must be some mistake. My interview didn't go well." "There's no mistake," the woman assured her. "The position reports directly to Mr. Vance himself. He was quite impressed with your credentials and innovative approach. Can you start Monday?" "Yes," Bianca managed, her mind spinning. "Yes, I can." After hanging up, she turned to Drew, who was smiling, though something in his expression seemed strained. "Good news." "The best," she breathed. "Vance Enterprises just offered me a position. I don't understand. The interview was a disaster." Drew cleared his throat. "That's actually what I wanted to talk to you about. I may have mentioned your qualifications to someone in HR." Bianca's joy faltered. "You went behind my back?" "Not exactly. I just made sure the right people saw your research." He stepped toward her, taking her hands. "You deserved that position on merit alone, Bianca. I just helped clear the obstacles." She wanted to be angry at his interference, but the joy of having her dreams within reach again overwhelmed her. "I still need to go home for a few days to help my family, but I can start Monday." "Perfect," Drew said, bringing her hands to his lips. "I'll drive you home today and pick you up Sunday evening." The drive to Little Creek took 3 hours, during which Bianca alternated between excitement about her new position and concern for her family's situation. Drew listened attentively, asking thoughtful questions about both agricultural challenges and her childhood memories as they passed familiar landmarks. When they finally turned onto the long dirt drive leading to the Peter family farm, Bianca felt a flutter of nervousness. Two worlds were colliding, her rural roots and this sophisticated man who had captured her heart in less than a week. "This is home," she said, as the weathered farmhouse came into view. "Not exactly what you're used to, I'm afraid." Drew surprised her by lifting her hand to his lips. "It's beautiful, honest, like you." Before she could respond, her younger sister Jasmine burst through the screen door, followed by their father, whose weathered face showed surprise at the luxury car now parked in his driveway. The next hours passed in a blur of introductions and explanations. Bianca announced her new position to her family's delight. Drew charmed them all, especially when he rolled up his sleeves to help her father with a broken tractor, showing surprising mechanical knowledge for a city boy, as Jasmine whispered to Bianca. As sunset painted the sky in shades of gold and pink, Drew reluctantly prepared to leave, promising to return Sunday. Bianca walked him to his car, suddenly reluctant to let him go. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything. Drew cupped her face in his hands, his expression intense. "Bianca, I need to tell you something important. About who I am." "Drew!" Jasmine called from the porch. "Dad wants to know if you'll stay for dinner." The moment broken, Drew sighed. "Sunday," he promised, kissing her deeply. "We'll talk then." The next 2 days passed quickly as Bianca helped her family catch up on planting. On Sunday afternoon, she packed a small suitcase, excitement building at the thought of seeing Drew again and starting her new position. Her father drove her to the train station, Drew having texted that morning that an emergency at work would prevent him from picking her up as planned. They'd agreed to meet at Vance Enterprises the next morning instead. Monday dawned bright and clear. Bianca dressed carefully in her best blouse and skirt, heart pounding with anticipation. The reception area of Vance Enterprises felt different, this time, full of possibility rather than intimidation. "Ms. Peter," the receptionist greeted her warmly. "Welcome to the team. Please sign these forms and I'll have someone show you to your office." As Bianca completed the paperwork, her gaze drifted to the wall behind the reception desk, where she hadn't noticed a portrait hanging before. Her pen froze mid-signature as she stared at the familiar face, those blue-green eyes she'd memorized. With her fingertips, that mouth that had whispered her name against her skin, the placard beneath the portrait read, "Andrew Vance, CEO." The world tilted beneath her feet. Drew. Andrew. The man she'd fallen for wasn't just an employee. He was the CEO. The man whose company had humiliated her. The man who had watched her interview and said nothing. The man who had pretended to be someone else while taking her into his bed. "Ms. Peter!" The receptionist's voice seemed to come from far away. "Are you all right? You've gone quite pale." "Where is his office?" Bianca asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Mr. Vance?" "Top floor. But he's expecting you at the orientation." In conference room, Bianca was already walking toward the elevator, rage and betrayal burning away the shock. Every memory of their time together now twisted into something ugly. Had it all been some kind of game? Poor rural girl gets seduced by the powerful CEO who pitied her? The elevator doors opened directly into a reception area where a startled assistant rose from her desk. "Ms. Peter, you're not scheduled until—" "Is he in there?" Bianca nodded toward the mahogany doors bearing the Vance Enterprises logo. "Yes, but he's on a call." Bianca pushed past her, throwing open the doors. Andrew, she couldn't think of him as Drew anymore, looked up from his desk, phone in hand. His eyes widened, and he quickly ended his call. "Bianca," he said, standing, "I was going to meet you downstairs after your orientation. I can explain—" "Explain what?" she demanded, her voice shaking with fury. "That you lied to me? That you watched those men humiliate me and did nothing? That you seduced me while hiding who you really were?" Andrew moved around his desk, reaching for her. "That's not how it was. I just wanted to know you without the complication of my position. Once I realized how I felt about you—" "How you felt?" Bianca stepped back, avoiding his touch. "You made me believe I earned this position. But it was pity, wasn't it? Poor country girl needed the great Andrew Vance to rescue her." "No," he insisted, anguish crossing his features. "Your work is brilliant. You earned this on merit alone. Stop lying." Tears burned in her eyes. "I trusted you. I let you touch me, all while you were laughing at the naive farm girl." "I never laughed at you," Andrew's voice cracked. "Bianca, I'm falling in love with you." The words hit her like a physical blow. "Love doesn't begin with lies." She pulled the job offer letter from her bag, tearing it in half. "I don't want your charity. I don't want anything from you." As she turned to leave, Andrew caught her arm. "Please," he whispered, "give me a chance to make this right." "For one." "Heartbeat," Bianca wavered, the memory of their connection still raw and powerful. Then she remembered the portrait in the lobby, the secret he'd kept while taking her into his arms. "Goodbye, Mr. Vance," she said, her voice cold as she pulled away. "Enjoy running your empire." She left him standing there, surrounded by the trappings of his power and wealth, but looking more lost than she'd ever seen him. As the elevator doors closed, separating their worlds once again, Bianca finally allowed the tears to fall. Chapter 5. Office Whispers. The train wheels clacked rhythmically beneath Bianca as she leaned her forehead against the cool window, watching the city's gleaming skyline recede into the distance. 2 weeks had passed since she'd walked out of Andrew Vance's office, her heart shattered and her pride in tatters. 2 weeks of ignoring his calls, deleting his messages unread, and trying to forget the taste of his lips on hers. She closed her eyes, hating that even now her body still responded to memories of his touch. Worse was the persistent ache in her chest, a hollowness that hadn't been there before she met him. "Last call for Little Creek," the conductor announced, jolting Bianca from her thoughts. Home. She was going home defeated for the second time. Only this time, the rejection was self-inflicted. She'd torn up a job offer most people would kill for. Her father was waiting at the small rural station in his weather-beaten pickup truck. One look at his face told Bianca something was wrong. "What happened?" she asked as she slid into the passenger seat. "Banks called in the loan," he said, his voice tight. "We've got 90 days to come up with the money or they're foreclosing." Bianca's stomach dropped. How much? When he named the figure, she felt physically ill. It might as well have been $1 million for all the chance they had of raising it. "I'll figure something out," she promised, squeezing his weathered hand. "My research, there are other companies." But even as she said it, Bianca knew the truth. Vance Enterprises was the industry leader. Other positions would take months to secure, if at all. The irony wasn't lost on her. The job she'd rejected out of pride could have saved her family's farm. 3 days later, Bianca's phone rang with an unknown number. She almost ignored it, thinking it might be Andrew trying from a different line, but something made her answer. "Ms. Peter, this is Catherine Morris from Vance Enterprises again." Bianca's fingers tightened around the phone. "I'm not interested in an... Mr. Vance has nothing to do with this call," the woman interrupted smoothly. "This is coming directly from the board of directors. We've reviewed your research, and we're prepared to offer you a position under our new Rural Development Initiative. The salary is double our previous offer, with a signing bonus that would be delivered immediately upon acceptance." Bianca's breath caught. The amount Catherine named for the signing bonus would cover her family's loan with money to spare. "Why would the board want me specifically?" she asked suspiciously. "Because your drought-resistant crop rotation system could save millions in agricultural losses annually. This isn't charity, Ms. Peter. This is business." Pride warred with necessity in Bianca's mind. Her family needed this money. And if she truly believed in her research, didn't she owe it to farming communities everywhere to implement it on a scale only Vance Enterprises could provide? "I have one condition," she said finally. "I report directly to the board, not to Mr. Vance." 24 hours later, Bianca stood once again in the gleaming lobby of Vance Enterprises, contract signed, bank transfer already completed to save her family's farm. The receptionist, a different one from before, directed her to the executive elevator that would take her to the research and development floor. "Your office is prepared, Miss Peter," the young woman said cheerfully. "Mr. Vance left specific instructions for your comfort." Bianca stiffened. "I don't report to Mr. Vance." The receptionist blinked in confusion. "Of course. I just meant he wanted to ensure you had everything you needed." The elevator ride seemed endless. When the doors finally opened, Bianca found herself in a spacious, light-filled laboratory space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. A sleek glass office in the corner bore her name on the door, and inside she found top-of-the-line equipment and a handwritten note on her desk. She crumpled the paper without reading it, tossing it into the trash. Whatever Andrew had to say, she didn't want to hear it. For 2 weeks, Bianca threw herself into her work, arriving early and leaving late. She built a small team of researchers who respected her expertise, and the initial trials of her drought-resistant methods were showing promising results. The board was pleased, her family's farm was safe, and she was finally implementing the work she'd dreamed of her entire academic career. There was just one problem: Andrew Vance. Though he respected her request not to report directly to him, his presence was inescapable. She would catch glimpses of him in the hallway, feel his eyes on her during company presentations, hear his voice in adjoining conference rooms. Each encounter left her pulse racing and her composure rattled. Worse were the whispers. Despite her professional achievements, rumors spread through the company. She must be sleeping with someone important. How else does a farm girl get a corner office her first month? I heard Vance himself is obsessed with her. Bianca held her head high, ignoring the gossip. But one afternoon, as she worked late in her lab, she overheard voices from the break room across the hall. "Country pussy must be something special," a male voice sneered. "Vance hasn't looked at another woman since she arrived. Maybe she's got him wrapped around more than just her finger," another man laughed crudely. "Gentlemen," a third voice cut, in ice-cold and instantly recognizable. "Perhaps you'd care to repeat those comments in my office before you clear out your desks." Bianca froze, clipboard clutched to her chest as Andrew's voice continued, now lowered to a dangerous tone. "Ms. Peter is the most qualified person in this building to lead our rural development initiative. Her research will likely save this company millions within 5 years. If I hear anyone suggest otherwise again, termination will be the least of their concerns. Am I clear?" She should have felt vindicated by his defense. Instead, it only reminded her of the power imbalance between them, how easily he could destroy careers with a word, how wealth and privilege insulated him from the real-world concerns that kept her awake at night. Footsteps approached her lab, and Bianca quickly busied herself with her samples, heart pounding. The door opened. "Bianca!" His voice still affected her, damn him. She looked up, keeping her expression neutral, despite the way her pulse leapt at the sight of him. Andrew looked exhausted, dark circles under those blue-green eyes, his usually. Impeccable appearance, slightly rumpled. "Mr. Vance," she acknowledged coldly. "Was there something you needed?" Pain flashed across his features at her formal tone. "I wanted to apologize for what you overheard. Those men have been terminated. I don't need you fighting my battles. I know." He took a step closer, then stopped himself. "Your work is exceptional, Bianca. The board is impressed." He ran a hand through his hair in a gesture so familiar it made her heart ache. "I miss you." The raw honesty in his voice nearly cracked her resolve. For a moment, Bianca remembered the man who had fed her pancakes in bed, who had listened to her dreams with genuine interest, who had looked at her like she was the most fascinating woman in the world. But then she remembered the lies. "Is there anything work-related you need, Mr. Vance?" she asked, proud of how steady her voice remained. Andrew's shoulders slumped slightly. "No, just—" He reached into his pocket and placed a small flash drive on her desk. The initial field. "Reports from Iowa. Your drought-resistant rotation is outperforming traditional methods by 27%. Thought you'd want to see the data immediately." "Thank you," she said stiffly. He lingered a moment longer. "The company is having a fundraising gala this weekend. Key investors will be there. Your presence would be valuable in explaining the rural initiative." "Is that an order?" "Never," he said quietly. "Just a request. You're changing the future of sustainable agriculture, Bianca. People should know who's behind the innovation." After he left, Bianca sank into her chair, trembling slightly. Every encounter with Andrew left her emotionally drained, caught between anger at his deception and the treacherous longing that refused to die. The fundraising gala would be torture, hours in his orbit, watching him charm investors with that smile that had once been directed at her. But her professional pride wouldn't let her hide in the shadows. This was her research, her vision. She had earned the right to present it. Saturday evening found Bianca stepping from a company car outside one of the city's most exclusive hotels, wearing a gown of deep forest green that she'd splurged on with part of her signing bonus. The bodice hugged her curves before flowing into a skirt that whispered against the marble floor as she entered the ballroom. She felt his gaze immediately, like a physical touch across the crowded room. Andrew stood surrounded by executives, but his attention was fixed entirely on her. For a breathless moment, their eyes locked, and the noise of the party seemed to fade away. Then someone touched her elbow, breaking the spell. "Miss Peter, the board members are eager to hear about your work." Bianca moved through the evening in a daze, accepting congratulations, explaining her research to interested investors, ignoring the speculative glances when Andrew entered her orbit, always keeping her at the edge of his attention while never directly approaching. It was nearly midnight when she finally stepped into an empty balcony for a moment of quiet. The city sprawled below, a tapestry of lights against the darkness. "You're the talk of the evening," Andrew's voice came from behind her. "Everyone's impressed." Bianca didn't turn. "Good. Then my presence has served its purpose." "That's not—" He sighed, moving to stand beside her at the railing, careful to maintain distance between them. "You look beautiful tonight. But then, you always do." The compliment slipped past her defenses, warming her despite herself. "Mr. Vance, please," he interrupted, voice strained. "When we're alone, at least call me Andrew." "I can't bear to hear you call me Mr. Vance," in that cold voice. "And I couldn't bear the lies," she countered, finally turning to face him. The raw emotion in his eyes nearly undid her. "You watched those men humiliate me and said nothing." "I fired them immediately afterward," he said quietly. "And when I followed you to that cafe, I just wanted to apologize. But then—" He looked away, his profile sharp against the city lights. "Then I met you, really met you, and for the first time in years, someone saw me. Not Andrew Vance, CEO, just me." "So you lied about who you were." "I omitted," he corrected, gently. "And I tried to tell you, multiple times, but each time we were interrupted and then you slept with me anyway," Bianca finished, the hurt rising fresh in her chest. Andrew's hands gripped the railing until his knuckles whitened. "I didn't sleep with you under false pretenses, Bianca. We didn't go that far. And what happened between us was real. Everything I said, everything I felt, that was all real." The sincerity in his voice made her waver. "It doesn't matter now. We're colleagues, nothing more." "It matters to me," he said simply. "You matter to me, more than anything has in a very long time." Before she could respond, the balcony doors opened and a board member stepped out. "Ah, there you are, Vance. The Johnsons are ready to commit to the European expansion. Oh, and Ms. Peter, your presentation was exceptional. You're a credit to this company." The moment shattered. Andrew's mask of professional courtesy slipped back into place, though his eyes remained fixed on Bianca's face a beat longer than necessary. "If you'll excuse me," he said softly, "duty calls." As he walked away, Bianca realized that despite her anger, despite her hurt, there was a part of her that still responded to him, a part that remembered lazy mornings and passionate kisses, deep conversations and genuine laughter, a part that wondered if perhaps there was more to the story than she had allowed herself to hear. Chapter 6. Midnight Confession. A month into her position at Vance Enterprises, Bianca had established a routine that made sense of her complicated new life. Days were devoted to her research, evenings to video calls with her family, and weekends to exploring the city on her own terms, deliberately avoiding the places she and Andrew had visited together. But tonight, the routine was broken. A major investor from Japan was touring the facilities, requiring her to stay late to prepare her lab for tomorrow's demonstration. The building had emptied hours ago, the skeleton night security staff nodding to her as they passed on their rounds. Bianca was uploading final data when her computer screen suddenly went dark. The lab's lights flickered, then died completely. Power outage. Perfect, she muttered, feeling her way to her desk where her phone lay. The screen illuminated her immediate surroundings, but the backup generators should have kicked in by now. The lab door swung open, a beam of flashlight cutting through the darkness. "Bianca?" Andrew's voice came from behind the light. "Are you in here?" Her heart lurched traitorously at his voice. "Yes. What happened to the power?" Transformer blew a few blocks over. He moved closer, the flashlight beam lowered to avoid blinding her. "The backup generator is running, but there's a routing issue to this floor. Maintenance is working on it. Are you okay?" "I'm fine." In the dim light from their phone screens, his features were softened, reminding her painfully of morning's waking. Up beside him, just losing work I hadn't saved. I thought everyone had gone home. He was close enough now that she could catch the scent of his cologne, the same one that had lingered on her skin after their night together. "What are you still doing here? Preparing for the Tanaka demonstration tomorrow?" Bianca moved away, needing distance from his overwhelming presence. "My research data should be backed up to the secure server every 15 minutes, he finished. "Standard protocol I implemented last year." Their eyes adjusted to the darkness, moonlight now filtering through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting everything in silver and shadow. Andrew looked different in this light, less the untouchable CEO and more the man who had held her through the night. "I should go," Bianca said, gathering her purse. "I can finish from home. The elevators are down, emergency stairs only, and security protocol keeps the stairwell doors locked from the inside during a power outage. We need to wait for maintenance, to restore power or manually override the system." "How long?" Andrew checked his phone. "They're saying at least an hour. Trapped. Alone. With him." The universe had a cruel sense of humor. An awkward silence fell between them, interrupted only by the distant sounds of the city below. Bianca moved to the wall of windows, gazing out at the twinkling lights, acutely aware of Andrew's presence behind her. "I never apologized properly," he said finally, his voice quiet in the darkness, "for deceiving you." Bianca closed her eyes. Briefly. "You don't need to—" "I do." His voice was closer now. She could feel the heat of him just behind her, though he didn't touch her. "When I saw you in that interview room, something happened to me, Bianca. Something I wasn't prepared for." She turned to face him, keeping her expression neutral despite the way her pulse raced. "Pity." "Recognition," he corrected softly. "I saw someone who reminded me of who I used to be before all this." He gestured to the gleaming lab, the trappings of corporate success. "Someone real." The vulnerability in his voice threatened to unravel her resolve. "So you followed me." "I followed you," he admitted, "with every intention of apologizing for my executive's behavior and offering you a position right then. But when I saw you in that cafe, brave even in disappointment, so far from home but still standing tall, I couldn't bear to be Andrew Vance to you." "Why not?" Bianca's voice was barely a whisper. "Because Andrew Vance never gets to just be a man meeting a beautiful woman in a cafe." His eyes held hers in the moonlight. "He never gets to know if someone likes him for himself or for his position, his money, his influence. He never gets to fall in love based on connection alone." The word love hung in the air between them, charged and dangerous. "Those were the best days of my life," Andrew continued when she remained silent. "Just being Drew with you, seeing the city through your eyes, talking about dreams instead of quarterly projections." Bianca's resolve weakened at the raw honesty in his voice. "You still lied," I omitted. he corrected gently. I never invented a false background or pretended to be someone I'm not. I just left out my last name. A rather significant omission, yes. He ran a hand through his hair in that familiar gesture that always made him look younger, more vulnerable. And I tried to tell you, that last morning, before your sister called, and again, before you discovered it on your own. I was a coward, Bianca, afraid of losing what we had, and in trying to protect it, I destroyed it instead. The silence stretched between them, filled with unspoken emotions. I missed the company gala in Milan to be here tonight. Andrew said suddenly, Did you know that? Bianca blinked at the change of subject. I know. Why? Because I knew you were preparing for the Tanaka presentation. Because I wanted to be here if you needed anything. His voice dropped lower. Because every minute in this building when I know you're here, I can't focus on anything else. The confession stole her breath. Andrew, I'm still falling in love with you, Bianca, he interrupted, the words tumbling out as if he couldn't contain them any longer. Despite your anger, despite your coldness, despite everything. And I suspect I'll keep falling even if you never forgive me. The raw emotion in his voice cracked something open inside her, the protective shell she'd built around her heart since discovering his identity. Before she could respond, a rattling file cabinet across the room distracted them both. I should. Check that, she said, grateful for the interruption as she hurried across the darkened lab. Her hand brushed a stack of folders, sending them cascading to the floor in a chaotic array of papers. Damn it! Andrew was beside her instantly, kneeling to help gather the scattered documents. Their hands collided as they reached for the same paper, and the contact sent electricity surging up her arm. Neither pulled away. In the moonlit darkness, time seemed suspended. Bianca could hear Andrew's breathing, slightly faster than normal, feel the warmth radiating from his body so close to hers. When she finally raised her eyes to his, the naked longing she saw there matched the ache in her own chest. I've missed you, she whispered, the admission torn from somewhere deep inside her. It was all the permission he needed. Andrew's mouth found hers with unerring accuracy, the kiss desperate and hungry, months of tension igniting into flame. His hands tangled in her hair, cradling her head as though she were precious, irreplaceable. Bianca's resistance crumbled entirely. She clutched his shirt, pulling him closer, pouring all her confusion and hurt and lingering desire into the kiss. His body was so familiar, the broad shoulders under her palms, the firm chest pressed against hers, the taste of him exactly as she remembered. Bianca. He groaned against her mouth, his voice reverent. Tell me to stop. Tell me you don't want this. But she couldn't lie, not to him, not to herself. Instead, she pulled him down to the floor with her, papers forgotten, as they rediscovered each other in the silvery darkness. Her blouse came unbuttoned beneath his trembling fingers, his tie loosened by her eager hands. I've dreamed about touching. You again? Andrew confessed against her neck, his lips tracing a burning path across her collarbone. Every night since you walked away. Bianca arched beneath him as his hand found her breast, thumbs circling the sensitive peak through delicate fabric. I tried to hate you, she admitted, breathless. I couldn't. Clothes were discarded in the darkness, inhibitions falling away with them. This time there would be no interruptions, no half measures. Skin against skin, they came together on the floor of her lab, moonlight silvering their entwined bodies as they moved in perfect rhythm. Look at me, Andrew whispered as they approached the edge together. I want to see your eyes when you come apart in my arms. Bianca obeyed, holding his gaze as pleasure built to an unbearable crescendo. In that moment of perfect vulnerability, something profound passed between them. Something beyond physical connection, beyond words. Afterward, he cradled her against his chest on the floor, his suit jacket spread beneath them, her head tucked under his chin. Neither spoke, afraid to break the fragile peace they'd found. The lights flickered, then blazed to life, reality intruding on their private world. Bianca, tensed, suddenly aware of their surroundings, the corporate lab, the scattered papers, their discarded clothes. Bianca, Andrew's voice was gentle as he felt her withdrawal. This wasn't just physical for me. You know that, right? She sat up, reaching for her blouse, suddenly shy. I don't know what it was. Yes, you do? He caught her hand, bringing it to his lips. You feel it too, this connection between us. It was there from the first moment. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed with an incoming call, her sister's ringtone. Bianca answered automatically, her mind still foggy with lingering pleasure. Bianca? Jasmine's voice was tight with anxiety. Dad's in the hospital. Heart attack. They don't know if he's going to make it. The world tilted beneath her. Bianca clutched the phone, her other hand reaching blindly for support and finding Andrew's steady grasp. I'm coming home, she managed, her voice breaking. I'll be on the first train. I'll drive you, Andrew said immediately, already gathering. Their clothes. We can be there in half the time. In the chaos of dressing and racing to his car, there was no time to process what had happened between them. Bianca moved on autopilot, terror for her father overshadowing everything else. Andrew drove with focused intensity, pushing the limits of safety without frightening her further. Throughout the 3-hour journey, he held her hand across the console, a silent anchor in the storm of her fear. He'll be all right, he murmured when tears slipped silently down her cheeks. Your father is strong, like his daughter. The simple comfort of his presence was something Bianca couldn't deny she needed. Whatever complications existed between them, in this moment, she was grateful not to be alone. Chapter 7. Family Crisis. Dawn was breaking over the hills when Andrew's car pulled into the small, rural hospital parking lot. Bianca had spent the journey oscillating between numbing fear and fervent prayers. Andrew's hand a steady anchor in hers. Now, as the reality of her father's condition loomed before her, she hesitated, her hand on the car door. What if I'm too late? She whispered, voicing her deepest fear. Andrew turned in his seat, gently turning her face toward his. You're here now. That's what matters. The quiet confidence in his voice steadied her. Bianca nodded, then rushed into the hospital, Andrew following close behind. The rural facility was a far cry from the gleaming medical centers of the city. Just one floor, faded linoleum, and fluorescent lights that cast everyone in a sickly pallor. Jasmine rose from a plastic chair in the waiting area, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. Bianca, she fell into her sister's arms. They just took him for more tests. The doctor says it was a major heart attack. Her gaze shifted to Andrew, confusion momentarily overriding her distress. Who's a friend? Bianca said quickly. He drove me. How's Dad doing? While Jasmine updated her, Andrew quietly approached the nurse's station. Within minutes, he returned with a doctor in tow, the chief cardiologist, according to his badge. Miss Peter, the doctor said, extending his hand to Bianca. I understand you're Joseph Peter's daughter. Let me brief you on your father's condition. The prognosis was guarded. Joseph needed specialized surgery, a procedure the small hospital wasn't equipped to perform. The nearest facility with the necessary technology was in the city, but the wait list was long, and insurance complications made immediate transfer unlikely. How long? Bianca asked, her voice steady despite the fear clutching at her throat. Weeks, possibly. We can stabilize him here, but the doctor's expression said what his words didn't. Weeks might be too long. Andrew had remained silent throughout the consultation, but now he stepped forward. I'd like a word with you privately, Doctor. Bianca watched them walk away. too exhausted to question Andrew's involvement. Half an hour later, he returned. "Your father is being transferred by helicopter to City Memorial within the hour," he said quietly. "They'll perform the surgery this afternoon." "How?" Bianca whispered, stunned. "The wait list, don't worry about that now." Andrew squeezed her hand. "Just be with your family. I've arranged for a car to take you all to the city. It should be here shortly." Jasmine stared between them, her exhaustion momentarily forgotten. "Who exactly are you?" Andrew extended his hand. "Andrew Vance." Her sister's eyes widened with recognition. "As in Vance Enterprises, the company Bianca works for?" "The very same," he confirmed with a small smile. Jasmine turned to Bianca, questions written across her face, but now wasn't the time for explanations. Their father was being prepped for transfer, and the sisters needed to gather essentials from home before following him to the city. "Come with us," Bianca said impulsively to Andrew. "To the house. I don't want to drive right now." The Peter family farmhouse looked smaller somehow as they approached, as if Bianca's time in the city had altered her perception. Peeling paint, a sagging porch step, the ancient oak tree with its tire swing, it was both achingly familiar and newly strange. While Jasmine rushed inside to pack bags, Bianca paused in the yard, overcome with memories and worry. Andrew stood beside her, silent but supportive, his presence a comfort she wasn't ready to examine too closely. "This is where I grew up," she said finally. "It's not much, but it's beautiful," Andrew interrupted softly. "I can feel the love in this place." His sincerity caught her off guard. This man who lived in penthouses and boardrooms was looking at her modest family home with genuine appreciation. No condescension, no pity, just understanding. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything you're doing." Andrew's hand found hers, warm and steady. "You don't need to thank me, Bianca." Their eyes met, the connection from the previous night still vibrating between them. But before either could speak, the moment was shattered by a truck roaring. Up the driveway, tires spitting gravel. A man in his 40s jumped out, his face twisted with anger. "Where's Joseph? I heard what happened." "Mr. Collins," Bianca acknowledged, recognizing her father's former farm manager, the one he'd fired. "Dad's being transferred to City Memorial for surgery." Collins sneered, his gaze shifting to Andrew, taking in the expensive clothes and city polish. "So you brought in outside help, huh? Rich boyfriend to the rescue?" "That's enough, Collins," Bianca said firmly. "This isn't the time." "Never is with you Peters," he spat. "Too proud to admit when you're wrong. Joseph fires me for trying to modernize, then nearly works himself to death. Well, good luck keeping this place going with him laid up. The bank'll take it for sure now." Andrew stepped forward, his posture relaxed but somehow commanding. "I believe Ms. Peter asked you to leave." Collins sized up Andrew, clearly noting the quiet authority in his stance. "Another city slicker who thinks he knows about farming, huh? You have no idea what's coming. Droughts predicted to be the worst in decades. Without proper irrigation systems, this place is done for." After Collins departed, Andrew turned to Bianca with concern. "Is that true about the drought?" She nodded. Grimly, "The forecast isn't good. Dad refused Collins' expensive modernization plans, said they'd worked the land the same way for generations. And what do you think?" Bianca sighed, looking out over the fields her family had tended for decades. "I think there's a middle path. My research at Vance focuses on drought resistance while honoring traditional techniques. But implementing it costs money we don't have." Andrew was quiet for a moment, his gaze thoughtful as he surveyed the farm. "Show me." "What?" "Show me your land. Help me understand." And so, while Jasmine packed inside, Bianca gave Andrew a tour of the Peter farm, the fields where she'd learned to drive a tractor at 12, the herb garden her mother had planted before she passed, the creek that ran low even now, hinting at the drought to come. Andrew listened intently, asking intelligent questions about soil composition and water rights, surprising her with his quick grasp of agricultural concepts. As they walked, Bianca found herself seeing her home through new eyes, recognizing its potential as well as its challenges. "Your research could save places like this," Andrew said, as they reached the highest point of the property, overlooking the patchwork of fields below. "Not just here, but farms everywhere struggling with changing climate patterns." "That was always the dream," Bianca admitted, "to bring innovation back home." "Then let's do it," he said simply. "Start here. Implement your methods on your family's land. A pilot program." Bianca stared at him. "But the cost. Consider Advanced Enterprises' investment in field testing." His expression was earnest, excited even. "This is exactly the real-world application. Your research needs to prove its viability." The proposition was tempting, a chance to save her family's farm while advancing her professional work. But wariness crept in. "Is this because of what happened between us last night?" she asked carefully. Andrew's expression sobered. "No, this is because your research has merit, because farms like this are the backbone of our food system." He stepped closer, his voice lowering. "What happened between us last night was beautiful, Bianca, but I would never use business to try to win your heart. That has to be separate." The sincerity in his eyes was unmistakable. Before she could respond, Jasmine called from the porch. Bags packed and ready to go. The next 72 hours passed in a blur of hospital corridors, surgical consultations, and cautious optimism. Joseph Peter's operation was successful, though recovery would be lengthy. Throughout it all, Andrew remained a steady presence, handling logistics so the sisters could focus on their father. On the third evening, with Joseph resting comfortably and Jasmine dozing in a chair beside his bed, Bianca stepped into the hospital corridor for a moment of quiet. Andrew was there, speaking in hushed tones on his phone about board meetings and quarterly projections. The CEO once again handling his responsibilities remotely while supporting her through the crisis. When he spotted her, he immediately ended the call. "How is he?" "Better. Stable." Bianca leaned against the wall, exhaustion evident in every line of her body. "The doctor says he can go home in about a week, but he can't work the farm for months." Andrew nodded, concern etched on his features. "And you? How are you holding up?" The simple question, asked with such genuine care, cracked her composure. Tears she'd been holding back for days finally spilled over, and without hesitation, Andrew gathered her into his arms. "I'm so tired," she confessed against his chest, his shirt dampening with her tears. "I don't know how to save the farm and take care of Dad and keep my job. It's too much." His arms tightened around her, one hand cradling the back of her head. "You don't have to do it all alone, Bianca. I've always handled everything myself. It's what we do in my family." Andrew drew back slightly, looking into her eyes with an intensity that stole her breath. "Let me help you. Not as your boss, not as someone who wants—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Just as someone who cares about you." The hospital corridor light cast half his face in shadow, reminding her of that night in her lab. But this was different. No heated passion clouding her judgment, just the raw honesty of a man showing his true self in crisis. "Why?" she whispered. "Why do you care so much?" Andrew's thumb brushed away a tear from her cheek, the gesture unbearably tender. "Because in all my life, you're the only woman who saw me, really saw me, before you knew my name or my position. Because you challenge me to be better, because when I'm with you, I remember what truly matters." His confession hung in the air between them, more intimate than their physical union had been. This wasn't about desire or attraction, though both still hummed between them. This was something deeper, something more frightening in its implications. "I'm scared," Bianca admitted, her voice barely audible. "Not just about Dad or the farm, about you, about us, whatever this is." "I know." Andrew's forehead rested against hers, his breath warm against her lips. "I'm scared too, but I think some things are worth being afraid for." In the sterile hospital corridor, under harsh fluorescent lights, with the beeping of medical equipment in the background, Bianca made a decision. She rose on tiptoes and pressed her lips to his, not a passionate kiss like before, but a gentle promise. A beginning. When they parted, Andrew's eyes held a question. "I don't know what happens next," Bianca said honestly. "But I'm willing to find out together." His smile was like sunrise breaking over her family's fields, warm, bright with possibility, and full of promise for growth to come. Chapter 8. Storm of Feelings. 2 weeks after Joseph Peter's surgery, Bianca stood in her family's fields, clipboard in hand, surveying the irrigation trenches being dug by a team of workers. Overhead, dark clouds gathered on the horizon, promising rain, but delivering only humid, heavy air that pressed down like a physical weight. The meteorological data suggests we have 3 days before the storm front moves in, said the agricultural engineer beside her, one of several specialists Andrew had arranged to help implement Bianca's drought-resistant farming approach. "We need to complete the water retention system before then." Bianca nodded, making notes on her clipboard. The transformation of the Peter farm over the past fortnight had been nothing short of miraculous. Where once there had been failing crops and outdated methods, now stood the beginnings of an innovative system combining her research with practical application. All courtesy of Vance Enterprises' Rural Development Pilot Program, Andrew's elegant solution to helping her family without wounding their pride. Her father, still recovering at home under Jasmine's watchful eye, had initially resisted the changes. Charity, he'd called it, until Bianca had shown him the contract naming their farm as an official research site, complete with compensation for their participation. "It's not charity, Dad," she'd explained, holding his hand in the hospital room. "It's science and business. Your land is perfect for testing these methods." She hadn't mentioned that Andrew had personally expedited the contract, cutting through red tape that would normally have taken months of committee approvals. Some things her proud father didn't need to know. "Ms. Peter?" The engineer's voice pulled her from her thoughts. "There's someone here to see you." Bianca turned to find Andrew, walking across the field toward them, dressed in jeans and a simple button-down rather than his usual suit. The sight of him still made her heart stutter, even after 2 weeks of daily calls and frequent visits, as they navigated this fragile new beginning between them. "Go ahead with the southern section," she told the engineer. "I'll catch up." As the man walked away, Andrew reached her, his smile warming his entire face. "The irrigation system looks good, ahead of schedule even." "We're racing the weather," Bianca replied, gesturing toward the darkening sky. "The forecast keeps changing, but we're definitely in for a major storm system." Andrew's expression grew serious. "That's partly why I'm here. The Weather Service just upgraded the warning. Flash flooding possible in low-lying areas." Concern tightened Bianca's chest. "The creek bed, if it overflows—" "I've already called in a team to sandbag the critical areas," he assured her. "They should be here within the hour." Bianca shook her head, not in disagreement but in wonder. "You think of everything." "Not everything." His hand brushed hers, the simple contact sending warmth up her arm despite the oppressive heat. "I didn't. I think to bring lunch, and I'm starving." The casual admission that even Andrew Vance could forget something as basic as food made her laugh. "Come to the house. Jasmine made enough chicken casserole to feed half the county." They walked side by side toward the farmhouse, close but not touching, both acutely aware of the workers scattered across the property. Their relationship remained private for now, a fragile new growth they were protecting from outside scrutiny. Inside the kitchen, they found Joseph Peter sitting at the table, poring over the farm's financial records, despite doctor's orders to rest. "Dad," Bianca chided gently. "You're supposed to be taking it easy." Joseph looked up, his weathered face brightening at the sight of his daughter, then growing more reserved as he noticed Andrew. Though he'd accepted the business arrangement, Joseph remained wary of the city executive who had taken such interest in their farm, and, Joseph suspected, in his daughter. "Mr. Vance," he acknowledged with a nod, "come to check on your investment?" "Just visiting," Andrew replied easily, seemingly unfazed by the older man's coolness. "And hoping to steal some of that casserole I've heard so much about." Jasmine bustled in from the pantry, breaking the tension with her cheerful presence. "You're just in time. I was about to call Bianca in for lunch anyway." The meal that followed was a study in contrasts, Jasmine chattering happily about the farm improvements, Joseph watching Andrew with cautious assessment, and Bianca caught between them, hyper-aware of Andrew's presence beside her at the table that had been her family's gathering place for generations. "These methods you're implementing," Joseph said suddenly, addressing Andrew directly. "They're really Bianca's research, aren't they? Not some corporate technique Vance Enterprises developed." Andrew set down his fork, meeting the older man's gaze with respect. "Absolutely. I recognized the genius of her approach immediately. All I did was provide resources to implement what she'd already created." Joseph's expression softened slightly. "She always was the smartest of my children. Even as a little girl, always asking why we did things certain ways, always looking for better methods." "Dad," Bianca protested, embarrassed. "It's true," Joseph continued, his voice gruff with pride. "Got her mother's brains and my stubbornness. Dangerous combination." Andrew smiled, his eyes finding Bianca's across the table. "I've noticed both qualities. They're quite compelling." The loaded word hung in the air, charged with meaning beyond professional admiration. Jasmine's gaze darted between them, a knowing smile playing on her lips, while Joseph's eyes narrowed slightly. Before the moment could grow more awkward, a loud knock came at the door. One of the field engineers stood on the porch, soaked despite the fact that it hadn't yet started raining. "Miss Peter, Mr. Vance, the creek's rising fast. Something must have broken upstream. We need to move the equipment to higher ground immediately." The leisurely lunch forgotten, everyone sprang into action. Despite his weakened condition, Joseph insisted on helping coordinate from the house, using his lifetime of knowledge about the farm's topography to direct workers to the most vulnerable areas. Outside, the sky had darkened to an ominous greenish black, wind whipping through the trees with increasing fury. Bianca and Andrew raced to the fields, where workers scrambled to secure equipment and protect freshly installed irrigation systems. "The eastern field is the lowest point," Bianca shouted over the rising wind. "If the creek overflows its banks, I'll take a team there," Andrew called back. "You focus on the seedlings we just planted." Bianca wanted to argue. The eastern field was the most dangerous area if flooding occurred, but there wasn't time. With a quick nod, she gathered several workers and headed for the vulnerable seedling beds they'd just established the day before. For the next 2 hours, they worked against the clock and the elements. The rain, when it finally came, didn't start. Gradually, but dropped like a wall of water, drenching everyone within seconds. Thunder cracked overhead, lightning illuminating the darkened landscape in stark flashes that revealed churning clouds and bending trees. By the time Bianca had secured tarps over the most vulnerable seedlings, her clothes were plastered to her. Skin and mud caked her boots, making each step a supreme effort. As she directed the last of her team toward the barn for shelter, she realized she hadn't seen Andrew in over an hour. Panic clawed at her throat. The eastern field, the creek. Fighting against the wind and driving rain, Bianca made her way toward the lowest part of the property. The normally placid creek had transformed into a roaring torrent, its banks already overflowed in several places. Through sheets of rain, she could make out figures struggling with sandbags, trying to divert the water from the fields. And there was Andrew, in the midst of it all, soaked to the skin, his expensive shirt torn, mud streaking his face as he worked. Alongside the farmhands, as if he'd done physical labor all his life. "Andrew!" she called, but the wind snatched her voice away. As she watched in horror, one of the sandbag barriers gave way under the pressure of the surging water. Andrew, standing too close, was knocked off his feet by the sudden rush. For one terrifying moment, Bianca lost sight of him in the muddy torrent. "Andrew!" she screamed, racing toward the flood without thought for her own safety. He surfaced a few yards downstream, coughing and sputtering but alive. Bianca and two farm workers reached him simultaneously, dragging him from the water's clutches onto the muddy bank. "Are you hurt?" Bianca demanded, her hands frantically checking him for injuries, heedless of the rain still pouring down on them. Andrew coughed up creek water, then managed a weak smile. "I'm okay, just taking an unexpected swim." Relief made her knees weak. Without caring who might see, Bianca threw her arms around him, burying her face against his neck, feeling his strong heartbeat against her chest. "Don't you dare scare me like that again," she whispered fiercely. His arms tightened around her, one hand cradling the back of her head. "Never," he promised against her hair. The storm continued to rage around them, but in that moment, clinging to each other in the mud and rain, something shifted between them, fear crystallizing into certainty, attraction deepening into something neither was ready to name but both could feel. By nightfall, they were sheltering in the old barn as a second wave of rain swept across the farm. Andrew wore borrowed clothes from Joseph's closet that hung loose on his frame, but they were dry, unlike the sodden garments they'd peeled off minutes earlier. The barn was dim, lit only by a battery-powered lantern that cast long shadows and bathed everything in golden light. "You could have been killed," Bianca said, breaking the charged silence between them. "It was just water," he replied, but his casual tone didn't match the intensity in his eyes. "It was a flash flood," Bianca corrected, moving closer to him. "People die in less." Andrew reached for her hand, gently pulling her to stand before him. "I'm fine, Bianca. We saved what we could. The rest can be repaired or replanted." "That's not the point." Her voice trembled slightly. "You were out there like it was your own farm, like it mattered to you personally. It does." His thumbs traced circles on the backs of her hands, his gaze never leaving hers. "Because it matters to you." The simple declaration undid her completely. Bianca's last defenses crumbled as she leaned down, capturing his mouth with hers in a kiss that spoke of fear and relief and something far deeper that neither had yet named. What began as comfort quickly ignited into passion. Andrew pulled her closer until she straddled his lap in the hay, their bodies remembering the connection they'd shared that night in her lab. His hands slid beneath her borrowed flannel shirt, finding warm skin still damp from the rain, while his mouth traced a burning path down her throat. "I was so scared," Bianca confessed against his ear, her fingers tangled in his hair. "When I couldn't see you in the water." Andrew pulled back slightly, cradling her face between his palms. "I'm falling in love with you, Bianca Peter," he said, the words simple and devastatingly honest. "I think I have been since that first day in the cafe." Bianca's heart seemed to stop, then race forward at twice its normal speed. "Andrew, you don't have to say anything," he interrupted gently. "I just needed you to know. After today, after nearly being swept away, I realized life is too short for half-truths and waiting for perfect moments." Instead of answering with words, Bianca kissed him again, pouring all her complicated feelings into the connection between them. Their bodies spoke what their voices could not yet fully articulate, finding in each other shelter from the storm raging both outside and within their hearts. Later, as they lay entwined on a makeshift bed of hay and old blankets, Andrew traced lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. "I've never felt this way," he admitted quietly, "like I've found something I didn't even know I was missing." Bianca smiled, against his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. A country girl and a CEO. Who would have thought? Andrew's arms tightened around her. "I don't care about any of that. CEO, farmer, city, country, none of it matters. Just you, just us." As rain drummed on the barn roof and lightning occasionally illuminated their sanctuary, Bianca allowed herself to believe him, to believe in the possibility of a future where their worlds could merge, where the barriers between them might not be insurmountable after all. "I love you too," she whispered, the words slipping out as naturally as breathing. "I tried not to, but I do." His answering kiss was gentle, reverent, a promise sealed in the night as the storm raged on. Chapter 9. Two Worlds. The morning after, the storm dawned clear and brilliant, sunlight streaming through the barn's weathered boards in golden shafts. Bianca woke, wrapped in Andrew's arms, their bodies nestled together on the impromptu bed of hay and blankets. For a moment, she simply watched him sleep, his face relaxed and younger-looking, without the weight of corporate responsibility. Last night they had crossed a threshold together, not just physically, though their love-making had been passionate and tender by turns. No, the true crossing had been in the words they'd finally spoken aloud. Love. A simple word with complicated implications for two people from such different worlds. Andrew stirred, his eyes blinking open to find her watching him. A slow smile spread across his face as he reached up to brush a strand of hair from her cheek. "Good morning," he murmured, voice husky with sleep. "Morning," she replied, suddenly shy despite their intimacy hours before. His fingers traced the curve of her jaw. "Having second thoughts?" "No," Bianca said honestly, "just thinking about what happens next." Before Andrew could respond, voices called from outside the barn. The real world intruding on their private sanctuary. "Bianca, you in there?" It was Jasmine, concern evident in her voice. "The crews are assessing storm damage and need direction." They dressed hurriedly in borrowed clothes, still damp from yesterday, stealing kisses between buttons and sharing secret smiles that spoke of their new understanding. When they emerged from the barn, Jasmine's knowing look made Bianca blush, but there was no time for explanations or embarrassment. The farm had survived the storm better than expected, thanks to the quick implementation of flood controls. Still, there was damage to repair and work to be done. Andrew rolled up his sleeves and dove in alongside everyone else, his corporate identity seemingly forgotten as he helped clear debris and salvage equipment. By mid-afternoon, Bianca's phone buzzed, with messages from the Vance Enterprises board, urgent matters requiring the CEO's attention. She watched as Andrew stepped away to make calls, his posture subtly shifting, voice taking on the authoritative tone she recognized from board meetings. "He can't stay here forever, you know," Jasmine said quietly, appearing at her side. "That's Andrew Vance over there. He has a company to run." "I know who he is," Bianca replied, unable to keep a defensive note from her voice. Jasmine's expression softened. "I didn't mean it like that. I'm happy for you, really. Just be careful with your heart, sis. Your worlds are very different." The reminder was unnecessary but sobering nonetheless. By evening, Andrew was preparing to return to the city, pressing a key into Bianca's palm before he left. "My penthouse," he explained, "for when you come back to the city next week for the board presentation. Stay with me." The invitation was both thrilling and intimidating, a glimpse into what a shared life might look like. Bianca closed her fingers around the key, feeling its weight as both promise and question. "I'll be there," she promised, standing on tiptoes to kiss him goodbye. As his car disappeared down the dusty drive, Bianca couldn't help wondering if last night's storm had swept them into something beautiful or dangerous. Or perhaps both. 6. Days later, Bianca stood in the elevator of Andrew's building, key in hand, heart racing with anticipation. Her presentation to the Vance Enterprises board was scheduled for the following morning, a comprehensive report on the initial success of her drought-resistant farming techniques as implemented on her family's land. The penthouse door opened to reveal a space both luxurious and surprisingly warm. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the glittering city skyline, but natural materials and earth tones made the space feel welcoming rather than coldly opulent. On the kitchen island sat a vase of wildflowers, not exotic blooms from some high-end florist, but familiar country blossoms that could have been plucked from her family's fields. "Welcome home," Andrew's voice came from behind her. She turned to find him watching her from the hallway, his expression a mixture of hope and uncertainty. Home. The word hung between them, weighted with possibility. "It's beautiful," Bianca said, moving toward him. "I was hoping you'd like it." His arms encircled her waist, drawing her close. "I've been thinking about you here constantly." Their reunion was sweet and passionate, the week's separation fueling their desire. Hours later, tangled in his sheets with the city lights twinkling beyond the windows, Bianca felt both perfectly at peace and strangely disoriented. This penthouse, these silk sheets, this glittering view, they belonged to Andrew's world, not hers. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, propping himself on one elbow to study her face. "How different this is from the barn," she admitted with a small smile. "Considerably less hay," Andrew laughed, the sound warming her from within. "I don't know, I found that hay surprisingly comfortable." His expression grew more serious. "Does it bother you, all this?" He gestured to the luxurious surroundings. Bianca considered the question honestly. "Not bother exactly, it's just... not me, not where I come from. It's just stuff, Bianca." His hand found hers beneath the sheets. "None of it matters compared to how I feel about you." She wished it were that simple. But as she drifted to sleep in his arms, Bianca couldn't help wondering if two people from such different backgrounds could truly build a life together. Or if this was just a beautiful interlude, doomed to end when reality reasserted itself. Morning brought a new challenge. As Bianca dressed for her presentation, Andrew's assistant called to inform him that several key board members had requested a private breakfast meeting beforehand. "I'm sorry," he said, already knotting his tie with practiced movements. "It's probably about the European expansion. I should be done before your presentation." "It's fine," Bianca assured him, though disappointment flickered through her. She'd hoped for his steadying presence as she prepared. Alone in his penthouse, Bianca felt suddenly out of place among the expensive furnishings and designer touches. She moved to the window, gazing out at the city that had once intimidated her, but now contained pieces of her heart, both in her work at Vance Enterprises and in her relationship with Andrew. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jasmine. "Good luck today. Dad's already bragging to the neighbors about his genius daughter presenting to those city suits. We love you." The message centered her, reminding Bianca of who she was and where she came from. Whatever happened with Andrew, whatever challenges their different backgrounds presented, she was still Bianca Peter, farm girl, agricultural scientist, woman of value in her own right. 3 hours later, Bianca stood before the Vance Enterprises board, presenting the preliminary data from her family's farm. The numbers spoke for themselves. Increased yield projections, reduced water usage, and significantly improved soil health. Her drought-resistant techniques weren't just theoretical anymore. They were proving successful in real-world conditions. "These results are impressive, Ms. Peter," said Eleanor Winters, the most senior board member. "If these numbers hold true at scale, Vance Enterprises could revolutionize agricultural sustainability worldwide." Pride swelled in Bianca's chest as she fielded questions confidently. This was her expertise, her passion, her contribution to both worlds she inhabited. "One question remains," said another board member, a silver-haired man whose name Bianca couldn't recall. "Why the Peter farm specifically? There are larger operations that would provide more comprehensive data sets." Before Bianca could respond, Andrew stepped in smoothly from his position at the head of the table. "The Peter farm offers unique soil conditions, particularly challenging for traditional farming methods. If our techniques succeed there, they'll succeed anywhere." It was a good answer, logical, business-focused, but Bianca noted the quick glances, exchanged among several board members, the subtle raising of eyebrows. They knew, or at least they suspected, that Andrew's interest wasn't purely professional. As the meeting concluded to enthusiastic approval of continued funding, Bianca gathered her materials, hyper-aware of the whispers and speculative glances following her. Once again, she was the outsider here, the country girl who didn't quite belong in the sleek corporate environment. "Ms. Peter," Bianca turned to find Eleanor Winters beside her, elegant in a tailored suit that probably cost more than Bianca's entire wardrobe. "Your presentation was excellent," the older woman said, "though I must say I find myself curious about your relationship with our CEO." Bianca stiffened. "My research stands on its own merits, Ms. Winters." "Of course it does," Eleanor agreed smoothly. "I wouldn't have voted to expand funding otherwise. But you should know that Andrew's position comes with certain expectations. Family connections matter in our world. Previous relationships have faltered under such pressure." The warning was gentle but unmistakable. Bianca maintained her composure with effort. "Thank you for your concern, but my personal life is my own business." Eleanor's smile didn't reach her eyes. "For now, perhaps, but if things progress between you and Andrew, it becomes the board's business as well. A CEO's choices reflect on the company, after all." The conversation left Bianca shaken as she made her way to Andrew's office. Their worlds weren't just different, they were in some ways incompatible. She loved her rural roots, the honest work of the farm, the community that had shaped her. Andrew's world was one of boardrooms and billion-dollar decisions, of family, legacies and corporate expectations. Andrew greeted her with a proud smile, oblivious to her inner turmoil. "You were brilliant in there. The board is fully committed to expanding your program." "Eleanor Winters spoke to me afterward," Bianca said quietly. "About us." Andrew's smile faded. "What did she say?" "Essentially that I'm not the right kind of woman for the CEO of Vance Enterprises, that your position comes with expectations about suitable partners." Anger flashed across Andrew's features. "That's not her place." "But she's not wrong, is she?" Bianca interrupted gently. "Your world has rules, mine doesn't. Expectations I've never had to consider." Andrew crossed the office to take her hands in his. "None of that matters to me, Bianca. I love you. We'll figure out the rest together." His conviction was touching, his faith in their love absolute. But as they left the office building that evening, Andrew nodding to security guards who knew him by name, business associates greeting him with deference, Bianca felt the gulf between their worlds more keenly than ever. That night in his penthouse, their lovemaking held a desperate edge, as if both were trying to bridge the invisible distance growing between them. Afterward, lying in his arms, Bianca voiced the fear that had been building all day. What if love isn't enough? she whispered against his chest. What if our worlds are too different? Andrew's arms tightened around her. Then we create our own world, he replied, his voice fierce with determination. One where we both belong. But as Bianca drifted towards sleep, Eleanor Winter's warning echoed in her mind. Love might conquer all in fairy tales, but in reality it had to contend with family expectations, corporate politics, and the deeply ingrained habits of two people from very different backgrounds. Tomorrow, she would return to her family's farm to continue overseeing the agricultural program. Andrew would remain in the city, running his corporate empire, and they would continue trying to build a bridge between their worlds, uncertain if it could bear the weight of their differences or their love. Chapter 10. Sweet Harvest of Love. The autumn sunset cast golden light across the Peter family farm as Bianca stood at the edge of the eastern field, clipboard in hand, watching the final harvest of their first season using her innovative methods. The results had exceeded even her most optimistic projections, 40% higher yield with 30% less water. 3 months had passed since her presentation to the Vance Enterprises board. 3 months of dividing her time between the farm and the city, between her family and Andrew, between her rural roots and the corporate world she was increasingly part of. Their love had deepened despite the challenges of their different worlds, but Bianca couldn't shake the feeling that eventually they would be forced to choose one life or the other. Admiring your success, Andrew's voice came from behind her. She turned to find him walking toward her, dust from the harvest clinging to his jeans and t-shirt. These days, he looked as comfortable on the farm as he did in a boardroom, a transformation that both surprised and delighted her. Our success, she corrected, sliding into his embrace. I couldn't have implemented any of this without you. He pressed a kiss to her forehead. There's something I want to show you. A surprise. 20 minutes. Later, Andrew's car pulled onto a winding gravel road that led to a hilltop overlooking the entire valley. An ancient oak tree stood sentinel at the crest, its sprawling branches offering dappled shade. This property came up for sale last month, Andrew said as they walked toward the oak. 200 acres, including this hilltop and the fields below. Bianca's breath caught. It's beautiful. I bought it, he said simply. She turned to him in surprise. You what? Why? Andrew's expression was a mixture of nervousness and hope. Because I'm tired of leaving you every Sunday, tired of watching you try to fit into my world during the week, knowing you're never quite comfortable there. He gestured toward the panoramic view. From here, you can see your family's farm. The city is just 40 minutes in that direction. Understanding dawned slowly. You're thinking of building something here? I'm thinking of building a life here, he corrected gently. With you. From his pocket, Andrew withdrew a small box carved from wood. Bianca's heart began to race as he dropped to one knee before her. Home isn't a penthouse or a farmhouse or any physical place at all, he said, his voice steady but threaded with emotion. Home is where you are, Bianca. He opened the wooden box to reveal a ring, unlike any Bianca had ever seen, a stunning diamond set in a band that incorporated delicate strands of what looked like woven wheat. The band is made from sterling silver, infused with wheat strands from your family's first successful harvest, Andrew explained. I wanted something that represented both our worlds, beautiful but strong, elegant but rooted in the earth. Tears blurred Bianca's vision as he continued. I love you, Bianca, Peter. Your brilliance, your determination, your compassion. I don't want to choose between your world and mine anymore. I want us to create our own. He took a deep breath. Will you marry me? For a moment, Bianca couldn't speak, overwhelmed by the journey that had brought them here, from that humiliating interview to this hilltop proposal. Yes, she finally managed, her voice choked with emotion. "Yes, I'll marry you." Relief and joy transformed Andrew's face as he slid the ring onto her finger. When he rose to kiss her, Bianca poured all her love and hope for their future into the connection. "I was so afraid," she admitted when they finally broke apart. "Afraid that eventually we'd have to choose one world or the other, that our differences would tear us apart. They almost did," Andrew acknowledged, "but our differences aren't obstacles. They're our strength. You've changed how I see everything, Bianca. You've made me a better man, a better leader. And together, we're building something neither of us could create alone." Their agricultural program had already expanded to dozens of farms across 3 states, combining Bianca's innovative techniques with Vance Enterprises' resources. Rural communities were benefiting from sustainable methods that preserved both tradition and environment. It was a perfect fusion of their worlds, just like their relationship. "What about the board?" Bianca asked, remembering Eleanor Winter's warning. "Won't they object to their CEO marrying a farm girl?" Andrew's laugh was genuine. "Actually, our agricultural initiative has been so successful that the board has completely changed their tune. Eleanor Winters herself suggested I secure your long-term commitment to the company at our last meeting." That evening, they returned to the Peter farmhouse to share their news. Joseph Peter studied the unusual ring on his daughter's finger, then looked up at Andrew with new respect in his eyes. "Wheat from our first harvest," the older man said gruffly. "That shows you understand what matters to us." "It matters to me too now," Andrew replied simply. "Your daughter taught me that." As night fell, Andrew and Bianca slipped away from the house, walking hand in hand through fields illuminated by a full harvest moon. They stopped beneath a sprawling oak, its ancient branches creating a cathedral of leaves above them. "I have another surprise," Andrew said, pulling Bianca close. "I've set up a foundation that will help implement your agricultural methods on family farms across the country. The board approved it unanimously this morning. We're calling it the Peter Vance Rural Sustainability Initiative." Overwhelmed, Bianca reached up to cradle his face between her palms. "You've thought of everything, haven't you?" Under the harvest moon, their lips met in a passionate kiss that quickly intensified. Andrew's hand slid beneath her flannel shirt, finding warm skin that responded instantly to his touch. Bianca pressed herself against him, fingers tangling in his hair as she surrendered to the desire that always simmered between them. "I need you," she whispered against his mouth. "Right here, under the stars." Their lovemaking was unhurried, yet intense, bodies moving together on a blanket beneath the oak tree, illuminated only by moonlight. As they reached the peak of pleasure together, Bianca felt something profound settle into place, a certainty that their love had bridged the gap between their worlds, creating something stronger and more beautiful than either could have imagined alone. Afterward, they lay entwined beneath the stars, planning their future home on the hilltop, their expanded agricultural program, their life together. The diamond on Bianca's finger caught the moonlight, the wheat strands in the band, a constant reminder of how far they'd come. "From that humiliating interview to this," Bianca mused, tracing patterns on Andrew's chest. "Who would have thought?" Andrew pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "I think we were always heading here, from the moment I first saw you. Some harvests just take time to reach their fullness." In the distance, the lights of her family's farmhouse mingled with the glow of the city beyond, no longer separate worlds but interconnected parts of the life they would build together. Perfect harvest of love.
Thanks for watching!